It is 5:31. I'll call the Public Safety Building Committee meeting to order for Tuesday, December 19th. First item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes. I believe only December 4th minutes were circulated to the committee. I don't know if the committee's had time to look through them, if they need some more time.
I've reviewed them.
I'm done. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Alright, we have a motion to accept as written. Is there a second?
Second.
I have one item, is the item 2, approval of meeting minutes from October 12th. We had already done that. It just looked like it was a
Typo.
copy paste item. So I'm fine with the minutes as amended by that. So probably
Just pull out item 2.
yeah. That's my only edit that I had. I don't know if anyone else had anything else.
Nope.
So John, why don't you just withdraw and just
Okay, I withdraw my motion to accept as written and amend my motion to,
Withdraw, you're just doing the motion.
what's that?
Before we withdraw it, so just doing
Okay,
the motion.
I make a motion to accept the minutes with item 2 stricken from the minutes.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
Then second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention, Mr. Coe.
By the way, yet again, great job in the minutes, John. Thank you.
Chairman's update. So the planning and conservation discussions continue with Donovan Sweeney on a weekly basis. I did listen into this week's discussion, heavily focused on driveway issues. Not driveway issues related to the chiefs, but driveway issues related to what the school is planning to do. So I took a step after hearing that to reach out to the school committee to let them know that we really need some definitive decisions on how they plan to use that driveway. Because every indication that we had from the public planning board meeting was that without that definitive plan, they may just hold up approval. So it sounds like the direction that the school is going to go, which I would term probably the path of least resistance, is they're going to use it for school bus traffic only. So it'll be those 15 buses, which will then give us a definitive way of defining the access. They will deal with the gate if that is how planning decides to go. And it should also give us definitive guidance around the light, right? So minimize concerns around how much traffic is really going to be coming through there. So that's the path that the superintendent is planning to type up in a memo to the planning board to hopefully solidify that. I think the planning board definitely has some concerns about future use, which is why they're, I think, pushing that process so hard in terms of having definitive guidance. Even though I would argue that it is a little bit over the property line of the subject property in under review right now. The one thing that we did ask the school committee to also do is just outline in whatever letter they submit to planning that they understand that there would be a new site plan review should they ever choose to do anything with that traffic circle going forward in terms of two-way, widening, etc. So just figured I'd point that out and bring that to everyone's attention. I think everyone's intention is that they'll have conservation and planning in the first couple weeks of January, and hopefully bring definitive plans to that will be signed off at that point with no, oh, we're still thinking about this or we're still thinking about that, really just kind of striking any of that sort of language from the discussion. What I was
So will that keep us on schedule? Is that pretty much still right?
Yeah, I think that everything I've heard, yeah.
Good.
What I want to do, and we're not going to be able to take an official vote on this until our consultants arrive, is we obviously had a lot of moving parts at the last meeting. I think we landed in general consensus. We never took any sort of motions on where we landed, but I did circulate to the committee in advance of the meeting where the Vertex spreadsheet ended up after those conversations. And I added like a little reconciliation of my own just to kind of show where we were coming up from purposes of the contingency and like how much, if the bid came in exactly as that spreadsheet showed today, you know, we'd be using, you know, approximately 200,000 of the contingency, and we'd be turning back in about 1.8 million to the town. So obviously we don't know how the bid's gonna come in. It could come in higher, it could come in lower. There could be items that are discovered throughout the construction process. But what I wanted to do is officially get on the record that this is the way we wanted to direct Vertex in context to go, in terms of we're not gonna make any more changes at future meetings, and they should proceed to kind of the 100% construction document phase. So I know they wanted to, in the presentation that they had circulated prior to the meeting, they have different siding options, like if we still wanted to analyze that. But I guess while we wait for them, if there's any discussion that we want to have on any of the items from last time that anyone wants to bring back up, or if everyone's good, we can kind of table that conversation until we get there. Right.
So, do you have your spreadsheet with you where you did the reconciliation?
I did.
I did my own after the meeting, and I got, look, my number's better than yours.
That's
so-
good. I like it better. That's
But
good.
I did something I know you didn't do, and that's still not the whole thing. So can you just, so I started with 1116406 as the overrun?
116. I started with 1172, and then I added 25,000 for, I believe that was the construction testing that they would carry on the
Because
site.
I left that off. I left that
Okay.
off because I'm hoping we can make up for that with some of the other stuff down
Yeah,
below.
yeah.
So I left that off. So that's one thing. So then I added, so from that I subtracted 397,002, which
Mhm.
was the acceptable to fire and police column,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then I added back 42,447, which is going back to the 2 driveways,
Yeah.
right? Then I subtracted from it 236,578, which was the next column, currently being included into construction docks,
Mhm.
right? Then I added back 23,720 for the granite curbing that they want to put back in, right? Then I said the canopy structure, the approach is 374,531.
Mhm.
And this is what I did that I don't think you did too. So I thought we had a discussion about reducing the cost of the HD shelving to going back to normal shelving. And he thought, and he said, well, that would save you at least half of that. So I used 50.
So are you using, are you using the sheet that was circulated via email in the last 24 to 48 hours, or are you using where we were starting from last?
Last time, I did this as soon as we finished that meeting, so I haven't gone back to it since
Okay.
then.
So what I'm using is the, John Lemieux sent a schedule after the meeting, which basically indicated all of those things, and he moved them into kind of the right column,
Okay,
so.
so I'm listening behind
Yeah.
this. Okay, so we'll, but I want to bring up the HD shelving. So it sounds like we're trying to build conventional files again. Why aren't we using storage, cloud storage, and all kinds of? Why aren't we trying to get everything scanned into some type of? I mean, they've got a big number for a computer network, which I don't really understand why they need that big a computer network for just this. But forgetting that, why aren't we trying to? I mean, are we really going to buy a bunch of file cabinets to stick a bunch of old files in?
Chief, do you want, is that evidence related?
Sorry, Chief, I don't mean to be crass, but
What we're going to go with is just shelves. So we have office file boxes full of paperwork, and some stuff you can't throw away. Original documents with signatures on it,
I'm
stuff
not
like
saying
that.
throw away, but we can't scan this stuff in?
It already is in our computer system for the most part. We do scan it, but a lot of documents, you can't throw away the originals. But we're just talking about shelving to put boxes on. That's all we're talking about.
So, but to the point, when a file's closed, there are some things I would imagine that can be saved electronically and tossed, but there are some that would have signatures on that have to be kept.
Well, there's state law in about getting rid of records. Usually it's like 7 years or whatever, and then, so we constantly updating. But yeah, all we're talking about is exactly what we have now, just shelving to put boxes on. You know, the fancy
That's
stuff
a
with
lot of money for shelving for boxes on. And laws have changed recently as far as what can be kept electronically, what can't. You know, you do a lot of things with electronic signatures these days that you couldn't before. So I just hope that we at least look at this closely and not spend a bunch of money on putting boxes on shelves that we really don't need to.
No, we've actually downsized those rooms quite a bit, but when they said half, I would have to get a number from the furniture. I think it's gonna be much more than half, you know, we're just putting in steel shelving.
Much more to save.
Yes,
Yeah,
much more than,
We talked about it was.
So
it was
$50,000
taking-
savings
It was
conservative.
actually gonna cut it in half, and you would still gonna do high density shelving, but only provide 50% of the full, of the total volume. So it's not taking it and turning it all into hard shelving, and the 50% of the cost is being saved. It's providing 50% of the 2 rooms would have high density shelving in it. It was just,
I
it's
was under the
conceptual.
impression that we're gonna get rid of all the high density.
We can.
Is high density
We
stuff
can.
on wheels that they would?
Yes.
Yeah, I was under the, unless you've got
That,
something
well,
different.
that was what I thought.
That's what we
On the
cut last
last-
meeting, yes.
Yeah,
That was my impression.
okay. My impression is we're getting rid of it and we're just going to conventional shelving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the dollar value was based on 50%, right? Ellen?
It was 50%.
Yeah. So clearly there'd be a lot more savings to
but
go
not
with
just
just
one.
furniture.
So when you say
Just
dollar,
literally-
because you didn't do anything with HD shelving in your number, right?
I took what Vertex came out of our last meeting. So
Okay.
they took, we were at about 100,000 last meeting. It's
Fifty.
now showing at 50,000.
Okay, so you have reflected 50 in your
Mhm.
little snapshot there,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah. So if we're going down to literally like metal shelving, it's gonna be a lot less than $50,000 for the 2-story.
Yes. So, I guess now that we have our consultants, I think, are there any questions outside of the siding that we want to resolve related to value engineering? So Jeff and Ellen, just to catch you up, what I was going to have the committee do was formally accept kind of what we agreed to previously and, you know, amend it as, depending on where we come out on your presentation now on siding. And then that will be where we're stopping, and assuming no changes of planning, that would be what you would take to construction documents. Okay. So does anyone have anything else other than the siding that they want to talk about in the value engineering? Does anyone have any changes of thought they want to throw out there? So I think in round numbers, we're sitting, prior to tonight's conversation, using approximately $200,000 of the $2 million contingency if the bid came in exactly at the estimates that have been provided by both estimating firms
And we will have another estimate done,
at construction documents.
construction.
What was the cost savings if we did change to the hardy plank, or even parts of the hardy plank? Was there?
Well, that-
That is a good segue.
But before you answer, when is the CD date?
That is something else we're also gonna talk about
Okay.
today.
All right.
So, probably do the elevations and the exterior design first. While we're doing this, Ellen, I'm gonna ask you to look up the dollar values, because I don't have it in front of me here.
I-
Three elements.
One question.
Go ahead, Chief.
for Jeff, and I don't think it reflected on your sheet, I think Ellen's, had sent an email on the vehicle exhaust system
Right.
and the savings. I don't think your valued engineer, Jason, showed that because it was still in research.
Right.
So I don't know if you guys have an update on this.
So I think Jeff has a whole bunch of additional items he wants to add to this list tonight.
Okay.
Subject to the committee's approval. I think
That
that's
was-
one of them, right?
That was one of them, then the facade is the other. I think those are the two major
Okay.
things. So, you've been given a package of hard copy drawings. The first page has signage, which we will talk about, but I think it's best we just skip over that and talk about the next 3 pages, which is conceptual options we put together based upon just the one view, and we didn't have time to do all the views, but just one view of replacing a portion of the masonry with hardy plank lap siding, essentially. You know, it would be somewhat residential looking, but we would use a wider exposure, so it'd be more of the board visible, so it'd be a little bit more beefy. Trim would be beefier, trim around the windows would be beefier, which we are in fact not showing trim around the windows, so keep that in mind. We didn't have time to get that trim in there. But the scale of this is not gonna be a house, it's gonna look more like a public building. That said, option A just does it on the, we call it the police and fire wings, gable ends, and keeps the rest of the red brick. Option B adds in the top part of the middle piece, which also would correspond to the back side where fitness is, above the flat roof. And option C does the reverse essentially of option A, and it's the middle piece that has a siding, which would also include the wing while holding some of the patrol functions which you see on the left, and in the back, the sally port area, as well as the fitness room facade on the back. So essentially the two gable end volumes that stick out on left and right would be masonry going all the way back to the back side of the building. We did not look at changing the apparatus bay or the training tower cladding materials because, given the fact that they would get probably more use in the use sort of, so I didn't think it would be reasonable to have the hardy plank try to hold up to that. So we left that masonry for now. So this relates back to the spreadsheet in a way, because conceptually, the B spreadsheet had an idea that we could take the majority of the building and turn it into hardy plank. And what we've done since then is to sort of break that down into variants. So each one of these do not add up to that total line item that was in your spreadsheet. I think it's 300 and something thousand.
321.
But these all have different number of components to them. So Ellen, what were the?
So A is $127,620.
You say that again, please.
$127,620. B is $149,680.
149,680.
Yes. And C is $79,660.
So obviously option B is gives you the most sense because we're replacing the most amount of brick. And then it goes down from there to option A and then down from there to option C.
That's a bit of a gap between 321.
Yeah, I was just going to explain the gap. So the gap refers to what we were predicting in that gap, which was basically removing all of the masonry from the building, the brick masonry. And on everything except for the apparatus bay would be the hardy plank siding. So basically from on the left side of the building, everything would be that siding. And on the right side, the apparatus bay itself would be changed to concrete masonry units, so concrete blocks. So we wouldn't have red brick on that side either. So that the 300 and plus was essentially the largest amount of cost savings we could find by changing the exterior materials. And you know, that would be a completely different look from what we've been talking about. So we didn't choose to render that at this point. We chose to render things we thought would be a little bit more palatable and represented some of the discussion that we've at least had as a group. We could always do that. But
Well, I
that's-
think the tenor from the committee last week, or it was last week, right?
It was.
Feels like a year ago. The tenor of last week, I think we pretty much said we weren't open to entertaining that option and sent them back to the drawing board to bring something in between. So I think we just owe feedback on whether A, it's something we even want to consider given the savings, and we're just looking to see if we could whittle down the numbers some more. I don't know that there's any obligation to accept what's been provided. It's
Yeah,
just
I mean-
you're throwing out options that
These are
need to
options.
be.
And the reason why we're doing the meeting today is because we told you last week we needed to know if we're going to be detailing the building differently, we need to know that right away. So the goal for this meeting today is to pick one of these options or none of them, just stick with what we're doing currently.
What's the durability of the hardy plank? Is it a 20-year product, 30-year product, 10-year product?
You know, I don't.
Is it like a
remember-
Trex deck and it's 30, 40 years?
It's concrete.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a concrete product, so it's gonna last a long time. It's concrete. So
Minimal maintenance?
it's not gonna last as long as brick,
At some point.
but depends on how much of use it gets subject to. You know, I think it's been around for 15 years or so, at least, maybe 20. So nobody really knows how long the coating is gonna last, and that's what your warranty is based upon, is the coating. But it is a product that can be painted. So if the coating, you know, in 20 years needs to be touched up, you can actually go in and paint it. Whereas, you know, for other types of siding products, you really can't paint them effectively. So you're relying essentially on how durable is the coating. But this is not, it's not something like brick. Brick is gonna be the longest, most durable material you can choose.
So Mike needs to weigh in here. We've got three options.
Yeah, that's all. The cost savings that you had is only there if it's all hardy plank or.
Yeah, so
brick.
we gave some numbers that went along with these. The top, I think, is 140K, somewhere around that, which is this one. in the
80 to
middle.
150.
Yeah, essentially, that's what it looks like. So if we went up to the 300, we'd have to completely scrap the
Right.
design.
All brick, yeah.
All either hardy plank or CMU, which would be completely different from what we had before. So these are sort of variants on what we had, at least what we had before.
But for me, it's starting to fall into that short-sightedness of it's $50
Pitch this as a
for-
50-year project.
Yeah, it's our 50-year building that we're talking about.
Well, that's why I'm looking at.
And I don't think you'll get, I don't know, you can jump in, Steve, I don't think you'll get 50 years on the coating of the hardy plank. It's gonna need to get to.
So I don't think we should be afraid of the hardy plank. That's what the entire Situate building is made of. Hardy plank has been the standard for Marriott, for Residence Inns for 25 years. So, you know, we get it that this building started as bricks. Don't be afraid of hardy plank though.
Well, the other thing is we'd have to spend 50 years looking at this ugly building.
That's how you really.
And maintenance.
Well, I don't think it's ugly.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I think we started with a lovely brick building and now we've got a Marriott. Just an opinion.
And I don't agree that they can't take care of it over 50 years, but that's cost that we're just deferring, so we could spend it now.
Is there any difference in insulation of the building when you have a hardy plank or something like that, or structure that doesn't?
The energy efficiency isn't gonna be affected really based upon whichever version you go with.
So you think this would last 20 years before we'd have to do anything to it?
It depends. Unfortunately, it's not a great answer, but it does depend on how much use it gets, how much exposure it gets, how well it was installed. But I'd say the coating's gonna last at least 15 years.
So the coating wears out, and then you can paint it, like you said. So once you paint it, is it like paint, and then every 5 years the paint's gonna be peeling off, you're gonna be redoing it, or is it, do you just reapply a certain type of coating? Is there a special hardy plank coating that goes over it, and then that lasts
So
another 10,
the
15
coating that's
years?
on the boards is factory applied, and it does have a lifespan. I would say it's not gonna fail in the sense that it's going to fall off or peel or crack. It's probably gonna fade more than anything. And so, over time, you might find that the building doesn't really look as vibrant.
I understand that.
And so maybe in 15 to 20 years, you might want to paint it. And then once you
And is
paint
it-
it, now you've gotta go back in every,
That was my question, is
5
it
to 10
standard
years, you've
paint,
gotta
or
go back in
is
and
it a coating that goes on it that
address
doesn't
it.
flake or come off or
So
anything?
any paint that you put on this is gonna have to be addressed just like any other paint job.
Paint surface, okay.
So it's not a hardy specific coating, it's paint.
Correct.
That was my question,
From
is
that
there a
point
special
on.
coating that goes on it that doesn't come off and needs less maintenance than paint, or is
I'm
it
not
like a
aware of
painted
any
building now?
specific coating. I think that most,
So once you get the paint on it, you're gonna have to do regular maintenance, just like every other building, every 5 or 6 years?
yeah, and I defer to Steve. I mean, it sounds like you have some examples, but I don't know how long the coating, realistically, I do not know how long that coating will last.
I don't know either. It's a cementitious product, so it's not like latex paint you put on it. You know, it's a cementitious with a bonding
Okay.
capability, but I'm not a technical expert. If we get into this detail, we should have a hardy guy telling us.
Yeah.
But, and the product's only been around for 15 years, so no
Well,
one's really
Marriott
seen
said
it.
it on Residence Inn since the Residence Inn existed, and it's been at least 25 years. Marriott
Okay.
Residence Inns have been out, so, and they don't, Marriott doesn't fool around.
So why did Situate go with hardy plank?
It's what was presented, and there wasn't much discussion about it, and that's right on the ocean there.
I think it's probably from an aesthetic look.
Yeah, it was a residential idea to fit in, you know, not unlike this community.
And we, to be honest with you, we've used it in other products, in other projects, and like Steve said, it's a fine product to use, especially if that's the look you're going for. It's one of the best you can put on if you want that type of a look. Because it's going to be much longer lasting than wood, and it's not gonna look cheap like vinyl would.
My thought is that's just a good chunk of savings that could be half of the cost of the carports that we did as an add-on, you know, if it comes back that way. That's a lot of money.
So
And I don't,
are you-
I'll
so
disagree
you're-
with you, Dave, I don't think it's that ugly. I think it looks kinda nice.
So, but John, just to clarify that, are you suggesting going back to full hardy plank?
No, I'm
or
just
just
saying-
one of
just-
these three options?
Yeah, one of these three options. I actually, my favorite option, besides even before I even knew that it was the most savings, I think that option B looks pretty good. And $150,000, that's a good chunk of change to save, in my personal opinion.
I should say.
There's a lot of people in this town that are on fixed incomes, and it's a good chunk of change to save.
I should also say to you, because it was essentially hot off the presses, we have not shared this with anybody else, so the chiefs haven't seen it till now. You guys are just seeing it for the first time.
How confident are you in your potential cost savings? Is that from the estimator?
It is using values provided by the estimator, but we did our own takeoff in terms of the square footage. So I think it's reasonable. I mean, we should probably get it back with the cost estimate and able to do that again, just to see if he agrees with the total savings. But he's the one that gave us the 300 and whatever savings, right? So I would say that, you know, we're not in the wrong ballpark.
Is there any local buildings that have it on, do you know of, Joe, that I could, before I,
My house.
you have it in your house?
Yeah.
Really?
Mhm.
And you're happy with it? So far?
Not for 5 years, not feeling it. But it's a house. If we went any sort of hardy plank route, you presented a plan originally planning. Is there any thought that there could be a different view, or do they take a view on exterior?
They're not supposed to. As
Okay.
far as I know, they're not supposed to.
They haven't brought it up to this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's a good chunk of change.
Should make sure.
They can always ask.
Yeah.
I mean, they, like
Yeah.
she said, they can always ask to,
Okay.
But
to
they haven't
comment,
brought
but
it up.
it's not really in there.
If you're anticipating a vote tonight, I'll tell you that I don't think we've heard enough about the hardy plank, no offense to you.
I
The
don't-
idea that we may have to paint it, I mean, I'd rather hear more about it, if people are seriously considering it, than
Yeah.
and know more about it.
I think it's being seriously considered.
Okay, well, okay, then we need to know more about it. At least that's how I feel.
So it sounds like we can talk to the rep
Mhm.
and try to answer as many questions as you guys have
So,
in the next.
oh, I'm just thinking through timing here,
Yes.
right? So, we're gonna have to have another public meeting, right? And this plan has to be final by January 8th.
What, maybe we could ask it a different
To
way.
save
What-
$150,000, I'll come to another meeting.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just making sure everyone's aware of.
I would vote tonight, so that's just.
Apart from the aesthetic look, which I think we can't solve with a conversation with a rep. And it sounds to me like you would like to know the longevity of the coating, how long Hardy Plank expects this thing to last without any.
First, how
real
long do they
maintenance.
warranty it? How long do they stand behind it and say,
Sure,
if it fails, we'll replace it?
yep. And that's usually the same thing, the same answers, that,
Okay.
you know, at least as long as the warranty.
How about a cost estimate for painting it in 10 years if it needed to be painted every 10 years or so? Because that could be factored into the
Yeah,
savings.
we can get you an idea of what that would be.
Okay.
And how long, is it a bonding material that they use, or like Steve said, it's not like a
Special
latex
paint,
paint they
right.
put on it?
Yeah.
And once they put this agent on, how long does that last?
Okay.
Because if that's another 20-year product after, once they put that on, I'm okay with it.
Yep.
Good, John.
Jeff, what about the, I'm sorry, John, you want that?
Yes.
What about like durability, like if somebody backed into the siding on the backside of the building?
Well, first of all, it's readily available, so, and it's easy to repair, and there's plenty of people that know how to use it. So I don't worry that that's a tremendous issue if you had to repair damage. Obviously, it's not as durable as brick, but you can back into brick and break the brick too. So, you know, it's, it takes a little bit of care, of course. It's not as durable as brick is, but I wouldn't be terribly concerned about it. You know, at the fire department doors, I just don't want you having to fix this thing all the time.
Yeah.
Not that happens, but it's
Never.
been known to happen.
Can we get the chief's opinions with your first thoughts on it?
I mean, obviously, it's a rendering, so it's hard to see. I mean, Chief and I had looked at the Rentham one. They used mix and match with the brick, it doesn't look that bad, I think it looks actually really nice, so. I don't know what your opinion is, Ken.
I got other battles to fight.
Yes, you do.
But there's some pictures in here, yeah, it can be, I'm not sure that I'm sold on any of the three, but there's some other mix and match options. We could show you a couple of pictures that, you know, it does look good on Rentham, I'll tell you that.
I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of get a handle on, so you could take a vote tonight about sort of the longevity, if there's like a break-even point where that's a palatable number, like if it was 20 years, if that's, you guys all said, if it was 20 years, we can vote on it tonight, or if it's 50 years, we can vote on it tonight, to save you from having another meeting, so doing the vote subject to proof that the manufacturer can meet that requirement.
I just looked it up quick on the internet. All James Hyde siding products come with a 30-year non-prorated limited warranty, and trim products come with a 15-year non-prorated limited warranty. So whatever that means.
That probably means materials and not
Materials only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other question I have is on maintenance of this stuff. Just looking at the color and stuff, it's gonna need to be regularly washed. Is that?
Well, it's like any siding product. I mean, it's eventually going to collect a little bit of dirt and grime, and so, you know, you could leave it and let the building just age, or you can wash it down, and the washing it won't be a problem.
How often do they wash Woodward School? It's got the same coloring on it. I've never seen them wash it since they built it.
Yeah, I don't know that it's washed very often.
Jason, have you washed your house?
Just the top, just the gutters. The siding doesn't, it's a lighter gray. Siding does not really change color.
Yeah.
How does it do with golf balls?
Fortunately, that's the way.
You can see my drive.
So I bet you with that information, Ken, I suspect that the rep isn't going to give us anything more than 30 years.
And do you think that there's, I heard Chief mention that he might have some other ways to render it. Do you feel like you've done?
I mean, we just
your
came up with some
rendering?
options.
Okay.
You know, just from both the perspective of aesthetics, but also from a budget standpoint as well. You know, we're picking larger swaths of the building, not little patches here and there. So we've got to have enough critical mass and make it worth something to a trade to bid a realistic price, and also to have a reasonable savings. So we can look at ways to manipulate a little. But I think we're talking about still being in the design phase and not the documentation phase, and that's a little bit different than where we were headed.
And I strongly believe we need to call the ball on this tonight. I'm not sure that any further deliberation is going to really sway someone. Anyone is welcome to disagree with that, but I think I've heard some strong opinions one way, maybe other opinions another way, I don't know, but I really think we need to provide them direction because, you know, I think we need to remember we've been pushing pretty hard with planning and conservation to close this out too, and we're hinging on their schedule, and if our schedule slips, we know what that cost us. These numbers are rounding compared to slipping on a project schedule. So I think the committee cannot be the delay of these actions. I'm also, you know, I have the ear of the Board of Selectmen in about an hour. You know, they're the ones that ultimately are approving these costs. So I'm happy to get opinions there too. But I think there needs to be a recommendation for or against it from this committee.
All right. I'm just concerned that we're relying on information we just looked up on a cell phone to make a decision about what the warranty is.
Well, you can contingent your opinion on a 30-year, and they can.
It's not going to affect my opinion on what this building should be made of. So just, but I am concerned that we're all relying on what that's. You can take a vote, and it's going to be contingent. I don't know how you unwind that vote if Jeff calls and says the warranty's 20 years.
Then we have another meeting. But I think I think there's some strong. It sounds like there's strong opinions both ways. So we may not even.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. If anyone has any views of what option, whether they want to eliminate all options. I'm hearing the gamut on this topic.
All right, I'll make a motion to support option B.
Be on the two gables plus across the top for savings of approximately $149,000.
$49,680. Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second. All right, discussion. Ms. Cook, do you have anything to add to support or refute Mr. Wood's motion, or any items you want to get on the table?
I just got a text from, during this, I texted the facilities director. Hardy's good depending on what it's going to be used for. You just want to be careful with the silica dust. Steve, have you ever heard anything about that?
That's
Well, it's part of the-
when you install it.
That's when you're installing?
Installation, because it's concrete, so you're cutting a concrete product, so you're using, just
But
like
not
you-
afterwards, it's no.
Yeah, right, yes.
Looks like there's a 15-year full warranty on parts and labor.
I mean, we can certainly track down the ref and get some concrete numbers from him for warranty data, what that actually represents, and paint coating, how long they really expect that to last, if it's anything much beyond the warranty.
But this is something we have to decide now, because we can't do an add-alls, right?
Not for this.
Right, so,
I guess for discussion, I'm in favor of saving $150,000, but not at any cost. And I think we're building a building that's going to be here for 50 years. And I think that I'm less sold on the durability and the maintenance of this white clapboarded product in place of brick. Because I know what we're dealing with brick. And I think that it'd be short-sighted to change the building or to use the hardy board rather than brick when we're looking at a 50-year project. That's my
opinion is similar to that. I think that we should stay with the brick. I am in favor of saving money. It is a big cost savings there. But there's also going to be maintenance down the road. Aesthetically, they kind of go both ways. It looks good with the hardy board, but I just like the idea of building a 50-year building and just knowing that there's no maintenance, minimal maintenance in the future.
I'm the same, I'm a brick guy, I think the brick is more durable, it's gonna outlast the hardy board.
let me ask this question. If we were under budget at the cost estimate, would you two be in favor of the hardy plank?
Yes.
Yes.
So I
Do you want me to caveat one?
Yeah, yeah.
If you're gonna sit in on the budget piece next, we've got a huge budget problem with the town as it is. And so we gotta do something. We gotta do everything we can to save money on this project. So even if we're under budget, we still save that much more money than town can do something else. So, and I actually think it looks nice. I actually think it looks better than brick. So I think it looks nice. So aesthetics, I think, are great. Chiefs seem to have seen buildings that are similar. They seem to be fine with it. You got Steve saying it worked great in Situate. So I wish we had better numbers so we could say do a cost benefit of, roll it all out for 50 years, but we don't have that tonight. So without that, I'm going to, except we're going to be minority, but I'd still vote for it.
Well, I guess if we got all that information, how many people actually think that they may change their view? Because I don't want to take something and have someone say, I regret it down the road. That's not my intention of pushing this. It's more, we need to give them direction so that they can have final construction documents. So, and I'm also cognizant of the fact that at least 3 committee members missing. So that's 3 potential votes. So I think we have 2 options. We can continue and take a vote on Mr. Wood's motion, and that's what we'll do, up or down, or we can all choose to meet. I don't know that we'll have our consultants available. We'll have to send something in email, and we'll have to talk about it live without benefit back and forth if you're out of the country, Jeff. So those are our two options. So
Right now, I figure there's 2 supporters, and that's it.
I don't know what Jason is.
well, I'm also cognizant of the fact there's 3 people that aren't here. That's my
Mike
only.
is not coming back?
No. So that's my other concern, right? If those other 3, we're a committee of 9 for a reason.
Yeah.
I absolutely want to advance this. I think everyone knows that, but right. What I don't want to do is postpone it, then have another meeting and have 5 people show up, and maybe it's the same 5, maybe it's not. It's not conducive to what I'm trying to accomplish in terms of at least getting more of a majority one way or another, because it's not going to be it's going to barely be a majority vote if I want the brick, right? Like I'm kind of deciding.
Everyone else has kind of made themselves, declared themselves.
Mm-hmm. So I'm cognizant of the fact that as kind of the chair of the committee, I've been holding out my opinion, but there's 3 other members that are not here. And that's my only hesitation with.
Right, so either it's going to carry brick or it's going to be a tie, and we're going to have another meeting anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is, look, from my perspective, this is a pretty big change on this building. Even more so than the budget numbers say. And I think it's, as much as I would like to take the vote now and end up, probably, maybe coming out with the brick, there are the 3 other people's opinions that we should value.
So let me-
But I do also recognize your issue, which is suppose they don't show up next time, or we have different.
Well, what I would ask from this committee is if we schedule time, only 5 of us need to be in a room. The other 4 can dial in from wherever you are. We're not going to do it on a holiday, but we have to follow the open meeting law. So if everyone can at least agree to dial in to that discussion, we'll try to work it so that we get half an hour or 45 minutes of people's time to finish this up. Only 5 of us need to show up in physical location in Southborough. The other 4 can dial in, it's just a roll call vote.
So do you know when that's going to be?
I assume we're going to get the answers pretty quickly.
Hopefully the rep will get back to us, yeah.
Right. So today is Tuesday. So I could not post a meeting until at least Friday. So we could do Friday, or we could go, after Christmas.
So you're talking about realistically probably the week between Christmas and New Year, somewhere in that time. The 4 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday
Yeah,
next
because
week.
then that way they have the first week of January, if they need to make an adjustment, to make whatever adjustments they need to make.
Yeah, I mean, we want to do it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
I think the committee is being asked to make a decision, or trying to make a decision without being armed with sufficient technical data. Everybody knows what brick is, but I don't think you've been provided with enough information about what hardy plank is. So I don't think it's fair to make a decision here. But I also recognize that this is the stage where you try to take the big swings. The next estimate isn't when you try to go from 3 coats of paint to 2 coats of paint. These are the decisions that you make now that are meaningful, as opposed to later where you try to, cut the caliper of the trees down to save money. So whether it's a decision that gets us under budget or just is a good idea and saves money, I think they're both very important decisions, and you should have the technical information. I have good experience with it, but I'm not a technical expert. I can't speak to 15, 20, 25-year maintenance. I found on my phone it says 30. I don't know what it talks about as far as the color and how that stands up, because it didn't mention that. So your point is certainly a good point, that I think that you guys need as a committee to be provided more information on this option that's being presented to be able to evaluate it.
Well, hardy plank's not going to get approved here tonight. It's either going to be a 4-2 vote for brick or 3-3 at a time. You may want to take a poll to see who can physically be here that week. I'm out of town the whole week. Can call in, but I can't be here. So will there be 5 people that will be here the week between Christmas and New Year's?
I will be here.
I'll be here.
Generally around.
Okay, so you got 5.
Or if we wanna go for Friday, I can post tomorrow morning.
Hey, Jason, I don't think
You
we're
don't
gonna
feel
have
like
it by
that?
Friday,
Okay.
just because of circumstance in our office.
But when do you need a decision by? Because that's important too.
Well, I could, obviously,
I'm trying to,
unfortunately, I'd like the decision Friday, we just won't be able to give the info, unless Steve does it, we won't be able to give you the information for Hardy Plank. For you to have what Steve's talking about, the actual information, it's pointless to meet unless you have data.
If we do this next week, is it gonna slow you down inordinately? All right, then do you wanna take it
We've already been slowed down to the point we are sitting here today, so next week, I don't know, like Steve pointed out, these are big decisions. I think it's appropriate for you to take the time to make the decision with all the information you need and not rush it. If that means we have to add an extra couple of days or a week to the schedule, that's what we have to do, but I think it's important to make sure that the decisions are made properly so that once it's built, nobody regrets making the decisions they made.
All right. If we can get everyone in the on the committee to hear what the other three people have to say, I think that's well.
alright, so I'm gonna aim for Tuesday. If anyone has a preference of time of day,
That's a tough question.
I'm off on next week.
I'm off next week.
Okay.
I'm in town, so that's
All right.
fine, whatever time. you
so
want.
I will try to get a hold of those that are not here and see if I can't wrangle a good time for all of us to meet very quickly. and
No, we need 5 physically here.
5
We got
physical.
5, he really needs to hear from the other 3.
Mhm.
I kind of think Mike is going to say Albrecht, right?
Mhm.
So we'll see what he says, and then you want to see what John Rooney and Peter.
Pete.
Yeah. All right. So I think that was the toughest topic.
All right.
I think in general, right, we're still looking at, I mean, I feel, and I will certainly message this to BOS tonight, but I mean, we're within 200,000 of contingency. While I'd much rather be 0 or under that, we're sitting pretty good, big picture, and I think everyone can at least agree on that. I think everyone's point is very well taken, so I think everyone has a little more time to digest it. If you have specific questions that you did not address tonight, I need them tomorrow morning, or send them directly to Jeff and Ellen, so that they bring us a comprehensive answer, and we're done with this. Okay. So, what I would like to still do, absent the exterior material, I would like to take a vote and get everyone's consensus on where we stand on everything else in the value engineering.
Is it appropriate to talk about the primal event, or the vehicle exhaust now or after you
You should probably talk about that in the screening now, right?
Okay.
And then we'll go to the,
Right.
James,
So-
you get an open motion, do we
Yep,
have?
there is no
John,
motion.
withdraw?
You want to withdraw the motion?
do you want to withdraw the motion?
I'll withdraw the motion.
Thank you.
I don't know.
20%.
Pending further information.
Yeah. So, you want to talk about climate event quickly? The chief gave a quick overview.
Great. So, I don't know what he said, but basically, we had planned on using a certain type of vehicle exhaust that's more expensive than what the department wants to use for this building. So after getting cost data from that particular manufacturer, vetting it through the cost estimator, we were able to calculate an actual savings on what was estimated in the cost estimate. It's about $100,000 direct, so that doesn't include all the markups. So essentially, forget the number. I'll tell you at the end where it stands, but it's a significant amount of money. On the flip side, we, in conversations with the planning board, we were talking about the mechanical equipment that goes outside, and there's a desire to have that screened both aesthetically and for sound transfer, so that residential views to the backside of the building not looking at mechanical equipment. That's come up at several meetings now, planning board. So we did not have that screening in our cost estimate. We have now taken that off and figured out what the costs are. That offsets that 100,000 by 50. I think that's the number, right, Ellen?
Yes.
So we're essentially looking at a net direct savings of 50, and I think the multiplier is somewhere around 20, 22%.
It's 25, it's 24 and change, so just call it
Yeah.
25%.
So multiply that 50 times that multiplier, and you get the actual
So
total
62.5.
cost. That's it. So that's what we're talking about, the adjustment that we've made. And those decisions have essentially been made, although I suppose you could choose to overrule the decision on the screening. But since we've been talking about it for a number of meetings with the planning board, that would change the discussion with them.
Seems a reasonable request in your
I
professional
would
opinion.
I would have expected that request from them if they hadn't come out and said it. I would have expected.
Now, this vehicle exhaust system, it's as safe and it creates no more noise to the neighbors, and it's,
Yeah, well, the advantage of this system is there's no fan. It recirculates the air inside the building, so there's no fan sitting on the roof that creates noise.
Fan is loud.
It's a filtration system. It filters the air inside the building. There'll be 8 of them, boxes that hang from the ceiling, and they pass the air through a filter, try to scrub out the particulate.
What's the maintenance on those filters?
I think we change them a couple, I don't know, how many times a year they
Remember
change
what
them.
the Medfield has, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they were saying they changed them a couple of times already, but it's filter change. You get up on a step ladder, you know, and you change the filters, and that's pretty easy.
Did you say the new vendor is Plymouth, or was that you had?
That
Plymouth?
was what we had previously assumed
Oh, okay.
for the cost estimate, which is I think $13,000 per drop. So you need 1 drop for each vehicle. So you multiply that times 13, potential drops, and you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of costs for that system. But this is essentially, it's basically a dumb fan with a filter on it, so it's a pretty cheap type of technology. So it's a lot of savings you can get.
It's a no-brainer to me. Any
Really?
comments or
So that
questions?
does change your number a little bit.
No, I came up with about 62.5 of net savings. Is that my check over there? All right, so we're down closer to 130 in terms of our number before siding.
Right.
All right. Now, there's no other
No other
items that are
changes.
going to add or delete costs that we're talking about, right? So what I would like to do is move to accept the value engineering proposals as accepted at our last meeting with the addition of the Plymouth vent, reduction in the exterior screening. I need a second on that.
Check.
Is there any discussion that anyone wants to have further on any of these items?
I just comment on, just 3 things I missed in my building, and they're not big items. Are we gonna have a water spigot by the air handling unit?
Yes.
Okay.
To wash down the
Yeah.
ERV filters.
We missed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
The Sally Port, I assume, Chief, you're gonna rinse cars off in the Sally
Yeah.
Port? So you might wanna have the electronics high with covers on them?
Yeah, we've already talked about that.
Okay.
I think you mentioned that earlier too,
Yeah.
so we talked about it.
And then where are we on the sprinkler system, lawn sprinkler system?
I do not believe, Ellen, there's any sprinklers in the cost estimate currently. Is there an irrigation system?
There was some talk with the planning, but we revised
No? I mean, in terms of the cost estimate.
in the cost estimate.
The only thing I would ask for is water and electricity on the outside of the building, and then the cost
Yeah,
is.
we do have water and
Yeah.
and water spigots and electrical on the outside. We often talk about doing irrigation, and in some cases, we can run it to a tank. The roof runoff and things like that to a tank. Otherwise, you'd have to have a pipe, water tap onto the main.
I'm just saying
after
that,
the meter.
$6,000 after in our building to, run a piece of copper out to, electrical plug right next to us.
Yeah, but the irrigation system you're talking about would be a underground with heads and everything, a full
Yeah.
sprinkler system.
Just for an option down the
An outdoor irrigation system for the plants, that's what we're talking
road.
about.
Yes, and the
And
grass.
mostly
That's
it's
not
a
in the
lawn.
plans right now?
Mostly it's just for lawns, and so we didn't see an area where there was a substantial amount of lawn, like just green grass, other than the front yard. That's about the only contiguous place where we have grass. Everything else is wildflower or meadow mix, which isn't necessarily need watering, and the plants that were chosen don't necessarily, beyond getting established, they don't necessarily need watering. So it's really just that front yard. If we were to do an irrigation system, that's where we probably recommend it.
But what you're trying to make sure of, John, is that we've got the ability to put one in?
Just have the plumbing and electricity,
Okay,
because
if we do one later on.
we value engineered out, ended up $800,000 under, and it was $6,000 to add it on, so if you have the stuff there, it's $2,000 to put plastic pipe in
Yeah,
there.
so you
So
don't have
we've
to
got
run
it
a
there,
water
you're
pipe.
satisfied, we've got the ability to do it if we decide to do it.
So
If we decide to do it, I'd
We
rather have.
do not have exactly what John's talking about. We have a standard water spigot on the outside of the building with a valve. But I think what we probably do is run an actual line intended for an irrigation system and just cap it at the exterior so that, well, the interior side of the exterior, so that in the future, if they had to break in, get at that tap and then run it out to the exterior, it's accessible so that you don't have to have this weird thing with a hose connecting to a hose bib and looks ugly. So it's probably a detail too minor for us to really talk about, but we will make sure it gets in the drawings.
Just a quick note for somebody who spends too much on grass at his home. The way that that's situated with the sun, that grass will cook. And that wide open, without shade, that'll just be burnt without irrigation.
I speak from experience. We built the building in the worst winter ever, and then we had the biggest drought ever in the spring. I was out there with sprinklers trying to save grass, and it just trimmed the weeds.
All right, any further discussion on the motion on the table? Ready for a vote? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, the next items I have are a lot less
Yeah.
significant, although there is one I do want to get to, but I figured we'd tackle the first page, which is the signage.
Can I give just some background, because I'm not sure everyone understands where the multiple sign options came from.
By all means.
So I was approached by the golf committee chair. They had a meeting at the same time, same night we were with planning last week. I keep saying a couple weeks ago. They asked, because we have to provide a definitive sign plan, and that has been subject to questions to planning, they asked for some indication that there was a golf course. So, to be very clear, I think this is something for the Board of Selectmen to decide, because I don't know that the town has decided that they're going to keep the St. Mark's Golf Course name. But what I did ask Jeff and Ellen to do was to provide renderings, which at least we could know what it would look like if that was something they chose to decide. But my view is that it's completely outside the purview of this committee, because I think it's, again, a much broader conversation.
I think it came up from planning from a wayfinding perspective, like how does somebody know that's where they're supposed to turn to get to the golf course, which makes a lot of sense. And then also from the golf, like you explained, the golf committee wanted to have some presence on the street as well. So these three options on this first page represent the original design, a design modifying the original to include a name to be determined later of what you named the golf course underneath. And then another request that came up at the planning board is to explore the, having the town sealed, like other signs in town, on this signage. So it has 3 elements on it. So the more you put, the smaller the name public safety building becomes. And we have a definitive limit to how much square footage we can have per sign. So this rectangle is all we get, all the real estate we get. So we're presenting this to get some feedback as to which of the 3 you would prefer, so that we can present correctly to the planning board. They need to know which one this committee is presenting as their option.
So Jason, you don't think this is our purview?
Especially the name, I'm not certainly, I don't know whether the town's going to continue with the name. I don't think it is, but I think I had a few thoughts just looking at it. Is there a reason why we're choosing public safety versus police fire? I don't know if the chiefs have a preference, but when I'm thinking about a public safety facility, and if I don't know Southborough and I'm driving up 85 and I need to find a safe place to go for whatever reason or help, I just want to be able to find this stinking place, and that's it.
You want to say fire and police?
Either police and fire, and I'm all for the biggest, boldest lettering for what we are building, so that there's no mistaking of within obviously the guidelines.
Yeah.
When I kind of look at this, right, and I know planning, thought of considering the town seal, but I think this is I would love to have the town seal, but
I think the design elements that are up to you are the wording of Southborough Public Safety, whether that's what you want the lettering to be or not, and the presence or not of the seal, and whether or not we include the golf course, whatever name it happens to be. I think those are the three items that we want clarity on, so we can present the correct sign to the planning board.
But you could leave space for the name of the golf course.
That's what I'm saying, it's like,
XXX,
to be
right?
determined later, it's gonna be some sort of
CBD.
lettering, and that's where it goes. So we're just picking the location.
And wasn't it Don Morris that wanted the seal? Is he the one that
I
asked
think
for
it
the
was
seal?
Andrew.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew did?
Asked
Yeah.
if there was a possibility to put it on, to stay with the theme with the
Okay.
rest of the public building.
And this needs to be done when you go back the first meeting in January. They want this done. They want this
They
all
want it
these
before
plans.
that, they want it in our package that we're gonna deliver to them that has the final documentation, because in their own words, whatever we submit is exactly what they want it to be built.
So if we don't do it, then who's going to do it?
Well, I'm just saying, I think, my view is, I think the Board of Selectmen need to weigh in here, but I think, my view is we decide whether we're going with Southborough Public Safety or Southborough Police Fire, and I want to get the chief's opinion on that. And I think we say, the Board of Selectmen will then have the option to add this lettering down below for the golf course at a later date, but have that lettering signed off, approved, match this, so that, the town doesn't own the golf course.
Yeah, I would
Still, like, I
expect-
think it's,
Would expect the planning board would be okay with leaving the exact name of the golf course to be determined.
We think so too.
Yeah.
I mean, that-
And
Yeah, I think
when
they're
you-
concerned with the location of the sign for sight distance and for snow covered when it gets plowed, that it's not blocked. There is an avenue for special permit. If the building inspector ultimately supplies the permit for the sign. And if there's a problem with the size, that could be a special permit during construction to get approval for a larger sign, I would imagine, for a variance for the size. The 10 square feet that's dictated is for municipal buildings in a residential zone. So it's the residential district that's constraining the size.
But the Board of Selectmen aren't going to meet before we're supposed to have this in. This is it for the year for them.
you can make a decision tonight if they have a strong view.
Okay?
I think we should just have one sign for police and fire. If the golf doesn't proceed after a couple of years, then we have to buy a new sign.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
I like the visibility of,
just
to
please.
Jason's point of seeing it, Southborough Police and Fire, not at Billy.
My opinion, as well as visibility, if we're going to take a point of view on this, and that I think if someone is having an emergency and trying to find a building, I think the sign should be dedicated strictly to the building. That's just my opinion.
Let's do
I
something.
had two quick things. First, I don't think you even need Southborough. I think police and fire is all you need for that. The other thing I wanted to throw in for your contingency list, it's come to my attention that the state is in the process of looking at changing all of its radios to a digital radio system statewide. And so you may want to think about what impact would that have and when would it happen in the course of equipping this building.
So I think the chiefs are working with radio vendors now, so.
But this is new news as far as I know.
I didn't
You
hear.
may be up on it.
I didn't hear what was the comment?
So,
Let's stick to this.
Yeah, I mean,
We
have to
really got to
walk.
get done. We got another
You
meeting
got
about to
you got a
start.
7 o'clock deadline, it's 25 minutes from now.
Yeah,
Just,
so on the sign itself,
Yeah.
so I'm hearing general consensus that we have an add-on option for golf after at the purview of the Board of Selectmen.
Have a space for it.
Have a space for it, so that looks like, I'll call it option B on this piece of paper. I'd like to hear the chief's view on whether you have a strong view of the wording that should go on the sign, what you've seen at other facilities, care.
I think it should be police fire on one side and fire police on the other side. Just to make it nicely done.
As long as the sign's all blue.
I prefer the police fire versus the public safety. I think it's more.
Chief Paulus.
Yeah.
Okay. We can go alphabetical order too.
I suggest you have the option for the golf sign, because they're gonna need a sign somewhere. You know, whether it lasts long or doesn't last long, it'd be kind of silly to come up, you know, a year from now and say, oh yeah, now what do we do? You know, where are we gonna put that sign? So we're gonna accommodate it, otherwise it'll be a mistake.
All right, town seal, any views on that?
I would defer to planning board since they seem to want this. I think it's a nice idea to start having consistent signs. So I like the idea of putting the seal there.
I like the idea. For me, though, it's a matter of making sure that the seal doesn't take up valuable space that's needed to make the sign visible for police and fire from the road. So if that means we have to go to even a little bit of a bigger sign to get the seal on, that's fine.
So I would suggest, like was referenced, that we choose, if we are wanting to include the seal, that for now, we choose option C. And then after we've concluded our planning board process, we then open a special permit to try to make the sign, to change the sign, make it bigger. Because frankly, at the size that it is now, I think we're losing something trying to cram all this onto the 10 square feet. And so we'll have to figure out how the planning board wants us to handle that after the fact, but we'll come up with a different design and handle it then. And at that point, it will probably be a change to the construction contract, as maybe a no bidding or.
This is trivial, so what? I mean, it's not gonna.
I think you're right. I don't think it's going to be a substantial change.
Can I make a comment about the seal? When we were doing a little research about the seal was on the police fire sign, which was put up in 2014, and then they referenced the library sign, which was done the year before, and there was no seal. It was just I guess it was something else. Like a badge, but it wasn't a seal in the same sense. So I don't know how many municipal buildings.
I mean, I'll throw it up for consideration to the board too. I think if planning board says that this has become too crunched and, you know, they indicated just, you know, a desire for a bigger sign, we clearly have a mechanism to do that. Or they could say take the seal off. They've rethought it now that they actually have a visual in front of them.
My reaction was they were simply just looking from this group to tell them what you wanted.
Yeah.
And
It was just an idea that was thrown out.
Yeah, it was an idea.
It was an
I don't think
idea, and I
it was
think
a
primarily they're concerned of where the sign is going,
Yeah.
more than they are exactly what's on it.
Yeah. I just think you want this thing to scream out. You want people to find this building more than any other building in this town.
Okay, so are we saying Southborough Fire and Police with the seal in the space below? That's what we're going to do here?
That's my preference.
Your preference is with the seal?
No seal.
No seal?
I'm more on like the B,
Because it's more,
option
this
B.
is an information sign, it's pretty, but this is what you need to have.
Mhm. Obviously, if the planning board really wants the seal, we're not gonna contest that, but I think I just look at these two drawings, and I think it's important to bring these two drawings so that someone can see it. It just gets scrunched, and then you're also dealing with the golf course, and you start adding that consideration in. What are they gonna call it, Town of Southborough Golf Course, right? I don't know, they could come up with some long name, they could dedicate it to someone.
Yeah.
I mean.
Can you shrink the seal down?
Or a B?
Well,
Yeah.
I think,
I mean, it's just a matter of how much you really want to, what are you looking at? At a certain point, you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to go with 2, is what we're saying?
that's what I think, yeah. I
That
think
is
so.
that is my preference.
I agree with
Because
Jason.
I don't think we should presume that we're going to get a special permit. We had a plan towards,
Well, I'm just trying to please the planning board. So you're okay if we do 2? Do you think everybody's okay?
I'm a messenger. I think that, Jeff, if you indicate, what's the size of the sign?
It's the maximum.
But what
under
is the dimension on this?
It's 2 by 5.
It's
Or it's
2
not
by
2 by
5?
5, it's
Or 2 by 4 and a
2.5 by 4.5 or something like that.
Yeah, it comes like 9.5, so you get an idea.
It's pretty close to 10 square feet.
Yeah, so if you're looking at that screen up there, it's probably 3/4 of that, maybe a little larger.
Yeah, we actually printed a version in our office. We have it hanging on the wall so we could see how big the letters were.
So what'd you say, it's 2 by 5 about?
2.5 by 4.5.
Yeah, 2.5 by
By
4.5, somewhere around that. Yeah.
So
It's not very big.
it's like the size of the door, a little
It's like a
smaller
larger
than the door.
seal.
that's not very big at all.
That's 2 by, that's
You have to put it right on the road, people have to
I
find
still
their
say
way
Yeah,
back.
I
that
mean,
St. Mark's Golf goes in the box below.
But we get your special
Yeah.
I think the size of the sign is appropriate for option A. The more we start adding to it, the more the letters get smaller and it starts losing something because you're trying to decipher also what you're looking to. Because as you're speeding faster, you're trying to read it, figure out what's what, and it's a little harder.
And based on that, you know, I'm concerned about even trying to get the golf course name in there as well.
That
And
goes
it-
below, that's a,
I think you gotta do that, David, they gotta have a sign.
Oh, I don't
Two
disagree,
signs.
but I don't,
Just below.
is there a rule that says we can't have a separate sign for the golf course? Does it have to be
Well, that
together?
would-
To Steve's point, I think whatever we're gonna do in the future for golf, if there is something, we should design it now and plan for it so that there's not just a wooden 2x4 stuck in the ground with a sign.
Right, my point is, if we're limited in the size of a sign, and we want to make sure the sign is big enough so that people can find police and fire, then maybe we need to have a separate sign for the golf course, because we can't afford to give up the real estate and still have that be a practical sign.
My
That's
opinion
my
is
point.
sign number 2 still works from a public safety perspective. I don't see a problem with the size of the letters
Okay.
in that sign.
And you have this up in your office?
Yeah, you wanna come over?
Joe, do we have to have numbers on the street?
It's probably, yeah, you're gonna need it on the
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah, so we figured the number would go on the side facing the street, because not many people are
The other
actually
side.
gonna look for the number, but
Yeah.
the small edge, at the actual edge facing the street, so it would be visible from a certain point. But we didn't wanna give up the real estate on the face of the sign for the number.
so you'll throw the number on the sign, then just
Yeah.
for completeness?
Yeah, it'll go on that little side edge.
Okay.
Just,
So you're gonna ask them to approve this tonight, number 2?
So I'm gonna talk about what we recommended, and they wanna see conceptuals, et cetera. I'm not sure that that's what they wanna get into tonight, to be quite honest with you, but, I just will ask for kind of, any concerns with the path that we're taking. And if there's no concerns, we've given our direction, and our consultant moves forward.
And we're trying to get this so they can finalize everything for Honeywell for the first
Mhm.
meeting in January.
Yeah.
So we're out of time.
Sorry, Chief, did you have something?
Just aesthetically, are we just looking at what the script is gonna be? Cause that kinda looks like the generic sign for, an elementary school built on the cheap. But I mean, like even down at Highway, that's a nice looking sign that they have down there, the carving in it and the.
So this is not a
the
wood
pillars.
carp sign, this is manufactured lettering attached to the signboard.
I could just show you a couple of samples I found. I mean, there's some like outstanding looking signs. I don't know how much they cost, but I mean, that's gonna be your first welcome to, this $22 million facility. I'm just looking at the picture and that just doesn't.
Our sign was 35,000?
Yeah, that was masonry and everything.
You spent 35,000 on your sign?
You got a picture of
we
it?
can beat that.
I think that's why, when Woodward was built or rebuilt, that's why there was no sign on the plans, and that's, I think, was a big part of starting to use the logo, and that's why the logo's out in front of Woodward now. So we didn't spend a whole bunch of money like that on Woodward when that was redone. That's what started, like, the second one, to put the logo up front.
What's the cost of this sign?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. It's not terribly complicated to build. It's fairly inexpensive. Now there is a sign over at Police and Fire right now. So, I mean, that could just get relocated here.
Do you have a particular love for that sign, anyone?
Chief says we're going the wrong way here.
The facilities bought that sign.
Are you attached to that sign?
I would just say, even the one down at DPW just looks a lot more aesthetically pleasing than.
So the dump sign looks better, huh?
Yeah, the other feature, which Ellen reminded me, is these letters are backlit, so that was the other conversation we've had with the planning board is, we used to have the option of putting lights outside the sign, shining back on the sign, so the entire board of the sign was lit up, and it's a little harder to see the lettering, but it's also a lot of bright light. With backlighting the letters, you get a little bit of a soft glow behind it, so you don't have as much light you're putting out, but you can see the lettering a lot better. It's more contrast essentially, so you can pick it up easier. So that's one of the features of this, which we wouldn't have. If we did a carved sign, we would just put lights in front of it and shine the lights back at the carved sign.
On this one, is this gonna look like a billboard?
No,
The
not a
lettering
Wendy's
is
sign,
backlit.
it wasn't that.
It's,
The lettering is backlit,
yeah.
so you see the letter is dark, right, and the
Oh,
letter
you
is
look at the
down.
cost.
Yeah, so like, it's like a channel, it has a groove behind the letter, and the
John
LEDs
said
fit
theirs
in
cost
behind there, and it
35,000.
just shines back off the sign, so it's a little bit of a light.
I feel like
glow.
it's
CMP costs $375, I guess I'm not sure.
What's the durability of this sign? It's gonna be, if it's backlit, it's gonna be plastic.
Hey, guys.
No, it's not.
Guys,
Fine.
we need to move beyond this.
I'm fine.
Okay.
So I'm gonna make a motion to
Cheesy sign.
propose to our design consultants to go with option 2, which provides the additional option in the future for golf course naming at the bottom of the sign. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, the one I want you to skip to is this site plan that has a red line on it. I think it's towards the end. And that's because this is being proposed as the boundary line between the golf course. This is from the design team being proposed to you as the boundary line between the public safety building and the golf course. The red line is stemming from what's called the limit of work, which is the line that rings the site that says LOW. And it goes across the backside of the parking lot and hits essentially the property line to Woodward School. So what we will use this for is to determine with the golf course what the public safety building's going to pay for in terms of landscaping and what the golf course is going to pay for in terms of elements. You'll note the clubhouse, the driveway, and the parking lot for the golf are all outside that line, with the assumption, as we've been showing in the budget, that there's some sort of a chunk of money there associated with that. So that is also up for discussion because I'm not quite sure still how that's exactly being handled. But everything else, landscape-wise, would be either left of the line or right of the line. For one thing I know for sure is that the golf course designer would like us, the public safety group, to plant larger plantings around the infiltration basin at the front of our site to screen the public safety building from the golf course more. And we don't need to do it, we're not planning on doing it, so we're not doing it as part of our project. But if they want to come in and pay for it and do it later, they certainly could. It's just not required by our project. It's on our side of the line, and we're going to do what we need to do on our side. So when things like this have come up in the planning board, it's been hard to differentiate between a golf course request and what we're actually proposing for the project. And this line is supposed to help us decide who owns what. So it's just thoughts on paper right now, and it's sort of presented to you for your feedback and direction. Ultimately, we would like to be able to sort of publish a drawing that shows maybe even some notes as to say who's doing what on this project. So it's very clear to both groups who owns what, who's paying for what, and what's being placed by what group. Does that make sense where we're headed?
Would you, for anything outside of the red line, would you be able to confirm to the golf committee what you're carrying, like whether the cost that's in that cost estimate is really everything outside of this line?
Right. So right now, just for your own information, and we can certainly give this to the golf committee, we are carrying the golf clubhouse, including the foundation and utilities, and grading and planting just regular grass there. The parking lot and driveway, including the grading and the plantings to screen that are required from the planning board, and the retaining walls associated with that, and the drainage that's associated with that. That's all inside of our cost estimate, even though it's on the other side of the line. It's all inside of our cost estimate.
But we've broken it out separately
We have
for
broken it
purposes
out
of
so that,
presentation.
so that you know what the number is. But
Can you
that's
do that list again?
starting from right to left, it's the golf course clubhouse, inclusive of the foundation, utilities, grading, and minimal landscaping with that facility.
I'm sorry, Jeff, that's the picking up and moving it onto the new foundation.
Correct.
Thank you.
The parking lot and driveway with its associated retaining walls, grading, landscaping, and drainage.
Okay, and what do you mean you're carrying those?
They are inside of the current cost estimate that you've been looking at.
But Kathy, it's below the
Oh,
line.
no, it's at
Yeah,
300,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So,
that's still
yeah,
way
so-
undecided as far as how that's getting paid for.
Because I forgot about that. Our construction cost estimate includes it, but John has broken it out so that in the spreadsheet you're looking at it's below the line. Yeah. So right now, what we'd be telling a contractor is to price and include in the construction cost those items in terms of work scope.
So that
Understand.
was the 350 that we were talking about a while ago,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
outside the
You
red
look
line
at-
here is basically, yeah.
he's got it down low here, because right now, we can't use our money to pay for it.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any feedback about where that line's drawn, or you don't really care. But I thought at a certain point we should make it official, and there needs to be some communication with the Gulf.
So I can certainly communicate, and if we have this actually electronically, I can send this to the golf committee. I think it's a joint conversation. I think they're planning to have a joint meeting with us in the new year, but I don't feel I think this is a reasonable cut. I personally, I don't know if anyone else has any other feedback. I don't know that we have any professional experience up here to move the line any further.
The other thing I would also advise is that you work with Mark Purple to make sure, if for legal purposes, that line has to be on a legal plan, so that for future whatever golf course or whatever preservation or whatever is happening there, that I don't know if that needs to be coordinated with the same line we're showing.
I think
or
the
we
Conservation
get people
Restriction Committee
confused.
should tell us where that line should go. quite
I agree,
honestly.
that's gotta be part of the job. Why does the red not come on around?
Because we hit the property line. That dashed line is essentially the property line between Woodward and the golf course site. So we stop it there, but we can draw that red line down on the side of the driveway, because that's essentially what it would do. It would follow the inside edge of the driveway down to the parking lot, and then across the mouth of the driveway.
So the golf course driveway is gonna be part on our parcel and then part on the school parcel?
Correct. The last item, if there's nothing else on this, the last item is simply to get your approval of the concept plan for phasing the project. There's a series of 3 drawings, site plan drawings. They're colored. One's green, one's orange, one's pink. And this walks you through essentially the phasing of the project. And I know Steve and Ellen worked on this carefully, so I don't know if you guys want to be the ones to explain it. But it pretty much walks you through step by step. Phase 1 is you build the golf course, move the house, move the golf clubhouse and build the septic system, and have access. Is that free in the access road?
The access road is within it. We're talking about septic field in there.
So that limit of work, essentially that little line that's drawn around that's all essentially one contractor's zone of operations. And then in phase 2, the brown or tan, you'll see that the construction entrance now is placed at Portable Road, and the limit of work line changes to include the public safety building site, the construction entrance, as well as the septic field. And so golf course traffic is then driven through the school from the left side of the drawing, and then through the circle connects to the golf course road going up to the parking lot and up to the golf clubhouse, and then from the clubhouse they have access to the remainder of the golf course from there. And so for the majority of construction, that would give the contractor 90%, 99% of the site for him to work on. And then phase 3 would be where we, what is phase 3? What's phase 3?
I just knew about 2, and
Yeah.
I don't have a problem, but,
Why do we have a phase 3 now?
Well, he has to stockpile some of the soils, so that was part of it from the grading. In phase 3,
I don't know.
yeah, because phase 2, you're excavating underneath you're over excavating.
Oh, phase 2 is just the excavation.
Yeah.
All right, so phase 2 and 3 really go together. For your purposes, they go together. They're really just 2 different coins of how the construction site is built. But the excavation in phase versus the actual hard construction phase. So for the purposes of this discussion, they're pretty much the same phase. So the reality is, what I wanted you to understand is how golf would have to operate while this site is being built. So that when we present that to planning board as the official approved phasing plan from this group, that everybody's on the same page. I don't need a vote or anything, I just wanna make sure you're on the same page with us as to how this phasing is working. If you have questions or selectmen wanna know why.
I'm just gonna, I just ask Mr. Lyons to take over as chair with a meeting, just to continue the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jay.
Good luck, Jerry.
Quick question, is the school okay with that access being used for the golf course through the school?
So when we met with the school,
So they're gonna lose a quorum.
Yeah,
I've
we
read
can
that
check.
one too.
Okay, did you need a vote on anything else?
The only other thing we were gonna talk about was schedule. We needed to talk about when we renew the 50% cost estimate. I don't know if you need to vote on it, or if you just direct us to do it.
Take your direction.
Okay. Because we lost that forum, so.
That's okay.
Our balloon is deflated.
It's fine, you can just nod your heads at us.
But you have to,
Yeah.
you can always take it up next week.
Motion to adjourn, is that what?
All right.
Yeah, you can adjourn now. I'm sorry, you guys are gonna have to stick around. Do you
Can't
need a
adjourn.
quorum for?
Kathy,
adjournment?
motion to adjourn.
We have to sit
Don't
there
walk
and
out,
go,
we can't adjourn until we have a motion, until we have everybody. Second. I'll
I'll
second.
second.
All right, I'm back.
Good point.
Now we're adjourned.
So now you can't debate.
yeah, you're right.